When Equiano's first biography first came out to both slave-owning and non-slave-owning audiences, I do believe that several things about it probably greatly challenged the prejudice that would be held by both groups of people, specifically about Africans and African slaves being brought into America, and also American slaves being born in America under the slavery system. First of all, one of the more surprising things to the audience would be just the eloquence that Equiano shows and how he tells the story. He's very well spoken. He writes very well. He writes very effectively for what he's trying to do. He also maintains a very civil tone to his audience. He does not come across aggressively or angrily to the audience. In fact, he's friendly with the audience. There are several times that he shows this friendliness in how he writes. Lastly, I think the most surprising thing that he's able to do with the contemporary audience of his time when it would be published would just be the persuasion that he has and the ability he has to make people put themselves in someone else's situation and understand that the situation's a terrible situation. I want to talk a little bit about specifically what makes the text so persuasive. One thing that really any reader has to pick up on is just the powerful imagery that Equiano is able to create with the words that he chooses. Rowlandson, we talked about in one of the videos that Rowlandson also has a lot of eloquence in her description, powerful images. Equiano, especially on the voyage, his first voyage, just the description of what goes on the ship is done in a way that's very vivid in its imagery and terrible in its imagery, but effective for what Equiano may have wanted to do with his text. I also think that he has a great ability to show the fear that he felt himself, and he shows the fear in a way that it transposes onto the audience, where we are not only afraid for him, but we are afraid with him, that the great fear at what he sees, we can't help but be afraid as well. Especially I think of when he goes onto the ship and he sees some of the ship's crew with their teeth filed to sharp points. Just terrible descriptions that we can't help but feel some of the fear that he must have felt as well. I think also it's important that he's able to take the idea of the savage, the stereotype of if you are black then you are a savage, and he really challenges that because he is the civil-minded man faced with savage surroundings. He's the civil person lost amongst the savages, and the interesting thing is the savages are the slave owners and also the slave traders. With that civility, it's also very interesting that with Christian audiences who would see any slave who would be a black slave, to see them as a savage or as a heathen, or similar to what the natives would have faced, that they would be seen as heathen and therefore not equal to the Christians. He is Christian in the text. He embraces Christianity. It's clear to the audience that he's Christian, so all of a sudden this heathen savage idea is removed. Equiano shows us Christianity, so what's happening to Equiano in the eyes of the Christian audience would be happening to a member of their own belief, which would be very persuasive, I think. I think it's also very important and effective that he uses both good and bad masters in his text. It's not only he doesn't only talk about the terrible masters that he had. He also includes some periods that he was treated well, and I think that during the time period this would help his message be an attack not on slave owners but on the institution of slavery itself, and I think that would be very effective in keeping people who would be a slave owner from reading this and feeling like, oh, this guy's attacking me. No, he doesn't really attack slave owners. Instead, he attacks the institution of slavery, I think, very effectively. He one of the most effective attacks I see on the institution of slavery is that he questions the Christianity of those who would be involved in this system. He basically says that anyone, he asks, where would you learn this kind of treatment? Did you learn this kind of treatment from an example set by your God? He says that anyone doing this would be a nominal Christian, a Christian in name only, not an actual Christian. I think that's as aggressive as I see that he gets in this text, but I think it is a very valid point that would probably stick with a slave-owning Christian audience. I think this would definitely give them pause to consider slavery as an institution. There is something to be aware of with this. There's a little bit of controversy in the world of academics about the validity of Equiano's autobiography. Some argue that the autobiography may be more fiction than fact. Here's the deal. First of all, you can't really prove. We don't have that many records on Equiano. The records we do have are for later on in life. So to me, the controversy doesn't really matter because you don't really have the records to prove either way. Second of all, the controversy is basically people say that Equiano may not have even been born in Africa. He may have been born in North Carolina. Other people say that no, that his account is true. He was born in Africa, captured by his own people, and sold into slavery. Bottom line is, it doesn't really change what Equiano is able to do. Either A, he was a man who went through these experiences, every one, true experiences, and he effectively retold the story of what happened to him. Or he was a man who listened to the experience of other slaves that he was around, and he effectively told these true stories to an audience. Equiano, though, is able to, in either situation, he's able to use his power of thought and speech and writing to, I think, very effectively publish a document that would change the way a large group of people would think about slavery. It would be very effective, I think, in making people who had never stopped to question the system that they may be involved in, get them to see it in a different way and start to question the rightness, the moral corruption, just the evil nature of this, because we see the terrible separation that Equiano has from his sister, and just every bad experience he has is communicated so well to the reader that I do think that the reader would be affected long term from his text.